What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday, Jake Waxman, Tom Level at Two Guys Talk Sports. Let's get the show on the road. All right, I'm going to start with talking about some Purdue basketball. So, Purdue, their record during non-conference play was 9-4 overall, and that includes the two conference games they played against Penn State and Maryland. And, not going to lie, I had some concerns about this Purdue basketball team heading into conference play, because, a few, of course. There were a couple of non-conference opponents that they played against, like Auburn, Texas A&M, and even Marquette. Were in those games, the defenses on all those teams exposed Purdue, and offense could not get a darn thing going, couldn't get into a flow or in sync because the defenses were disruptive. So I was concerned there might be more of that awaiting Purdue in non-conference, and maybe to a degree there will be some games like that still, but I'm still not, like, I wouldn't say I was overall worried about, like, Purdue missing the tournament, but just overall about what would happen once they made the tournament. That kind of thing. But I will also say this. I think Purdue, in spite of those losses that they had, and those were all good those three of those losses were good losses. Losses to the Auburn, who's a great basketball team, and I mentioned Marquette, another great basketball program right now. Those are all most of their losses, and then Texas A&M, who's a top 15 program. Those are all great programs. Those are all fantastic programs, and ones that can grind you down on both the offensive and the defensive end. And I just gotta say, the Purdue Boilermakers, okay, still a young team. I have no doubt they're gonna make the tournament. I don't know what's gonna happen once they make the tournament or how far they'll go in the tournament. But I will say, this Purdue team has learned a thing or two, especially from the Auburn game. Because ever since those games where those non-conference losses where they struggled, Purdue in conference play has they figured out some things. They got a 5-game winning streak going on. Okay, one of those games was their last non-conference game of the season. And then they got a 6-game winning streak going, if I'm correct. Actually, no, it's a 5-game winning streak. But Purdue and their first 4 games of 2025, they've actually played really particularly well and have played like a team that has a lot of chemistry right now. And it's really good to see. Now, granted, it wasn't against opponents like Auburn or Texas A&M or Marquette or even Penn State. I'll give you that. But they've beaten teams like Northwestern and Nebraska. Those are probably their 2 best victories, and then Rutgers, of course. But this Purdue team, they've learned a thing or two from those tough non-conference losses, and right now, they're playing pretty well. Okay, so granted, it's against some of the teams that are in the back half of the Big Ten standings, but this Purdue team, they figured some things out. All right, after the struggles of those really tough games, they have figured out some things, like their defenses Purdue has stepped it up on defense. They're playing fantastic defense as of late. And offense, much more in sync. Some shots are being made, too. And also, adjustments into the lineup. Putting guys like C.J. Cox and Caleb Furst into the starting lineup has made a huge difference. Good coaching adjustments by Matt Painter. You got your big 3 in Fletcher Loyer, Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Renn leading the way in terms of the points. Or scoring points. So, really, okay, this Purdue team, all right. We'll see how far this young team goes, but they're getting into their rhythm. They're figuring some things out, and they're looking more like the Purdue basketball that I'm accustomed to. High-speed offense and also just as valiant on defense. So that's what I've noticed. Big adjustments, and a lot of that, I think, has to do with what they've learned from those tough losses against teams like Auburn, as I mentioned, and Marquette, They're starting to kind of figure out how to not only be more consistent on both ends of the basketball, but also getting others around the team, like C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris, more involved in the game plan. So, and I give Matt Painter some props for making adjustments. Now, how long that momentum will carry for, we'll see. Again, I still think this is a Purdue team that's going to not only make the Big Ten tournament, they're going to make the NCAA tournament, all right? They're going to win enough games, from what I've seen. They will win enough games to make the Big Ten, not just the Big Ten tournament, but the NCAA tournament, okay? I'm not worried about that. Now, how far they'll go once they get to the NCAA tournament, That's the question mark. But I always kind of figured, okay, this is going to be a building season for Purdue. All right, got some young guys in there. Got to help them understand how things work at Purdue. Help them develop, build not only build their character, but build up kind of building up their knowledge of the system as well. And so far, the last few weeks, things have been going well for Purdue. They've been able to. They look a lot more steady, and especially on both sides of the ball. So right now, this is the kind of Purdue. And usually, January is one of the better months for Purdue basketball, historically speaking. It's one of the months where Purdue plays really, really fantastic basketball. It's February we got to worry about. Even though the last February was great for Purdue basketball, might not be so much for this Purdue basketball team. So, but we'll see. But so far, in spite of some, there were a lot of people worried about Purdue basketball. Like, are they okay? Or, they might not make the NCAA tournament. They played some of the best teams, of course, in Auburn and Marquette. Had some good losses. And losses that I think they've learned a lot from and are applying it into this winning streak that they have put together. So, they'll probably run into another team in the Big Ten that likes to play that pressure defense. And how they'll handle it, we'll see coming out of this win streak. And, of course, critical week for Purdue basketball this week. They're on the West Coast for their next two games. On the road. Tonight, they're playing at Washington. And on Saturday, they'll play at Oregon. And that's going to be a tough game. And that Oregon team, they can put a lot of pressure on Purdue. So, we'll see how things go. But, so far, a lot to like from this Purdue Boilermakers basketball team in this 5-game winning streak that they have going on. And now we'll move on to football. Oh boy. Alright, so I'm going to start with the Bears head coaching search, and here's an update on it. Mike Vrabel, he is not going to be the next Bears head coach. He's going to be the Patriots' next head coach. It's a bummer. Alright, I was hoping that he might be around so the Bears could pick him in the event that the talks with Ben Johnson doesn't work out, but I'm also not surprised that he's going back to New England. All right, he came from there. It's fitting. All right, he's going back to the Patriots, and he's going to make a fantastic coach for the Patriots. And he's got Drake May to work with, who I think could be a fantastic quarterback in the NFL if he develops, of course. It's going to be critical. That development's going to be critical, but having Mike Vrabel as the coach, I think, is going to help Drake May out a lot. So that's one of two candidates that's off the boards for the Bears that I've been looking at. So that just leaves us with one. And that's Ben Johnson. And for me, oh boy, it's Ben Johnson or bust for the Bears. Gotta get him. Yes, I know it's a bit of a risky hire because he has no coaching experience, but with this offense, one thing that could worry a lot of fan bases of all, not just the Bears, but those looking at Ben Johnson as a coach, one question we should be asking is he doing as great as he is because of the talent that he has around, or does he have a good system around him? I think it's both ways, but I do think he puts together a fantastic offensive system. But he also does have those players in Detroit that are very, very talented and allow him to build the kind of offensive system that he wants. But there's some pieces in Chicago, too. If he decides to be the Chicago Bears head coach, he can build great offensive systems there, especially with the pieces that the Bears have on offense. But here's the thing. That's the guy, regardless, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't, But, and this is in terms of, if he ends up being the Bears head coach and still gets fired, hey, it is what it is. But I think the Bears, they should take a chance on him, okay? Get Ben Johnson. All right, maybe I might be okay with a Mike McCarthy or even a Pete Carroll, since they have coaching experience and can be great motivators, but we need somebody fresh. The Bears need somebody, a fresh mind in this organization, someone with a fresh football mind, someone who knows the ins and outs of today's NFL, and I think Ben Johnson knows that extremely well, especially on the offensive side of the ball. He can help Caleb Williams out a ton with his footwork and, timing of his throws, accuracy, all things that Caleb Williams needs to work on. I think Williams is good. I think the Bears have their quarterback in Caleb Williams. There's no doubt about that. Just need to get a coach that can help him with his weaknesses, and I think Ben Johnson is the guy there. We'll see. If the Bears don't get Ben Johnson, I hope it's because Ben Johnson didn't want to come to Chicago. If it's because if it's because the Bears were refusing to pay him what he wanted, then or give him what else he wanted, then typical Bears. But now the pressure is really on with Mike Vrabel on the table. Ben Johnson or bust for the Chicago Bears, and it looks like Ben Johnson is not going to return to Detroit, regardless of how they do in the postseason. So, oh boy. And there's a lot of talk about the Raiders now being the favorites to land Ben Johnson. We'll see. Jacksonville, and I think Jacksonville and Chicago can offer just as much money as the Las Vegas Raiders can. But we'll see how this goes. There's just nobody else I want right now to be the Bears head coach than Ben Johnson, all right? I think he's the right guy for the job. But we'll see what happens. All I can do is just sit back and wait and hope the Bears actually get this right and go and get Ben Johnson. Or at least land him. Sign him to a big deal, whatever it takes. Oh boy. So, with Mike Vrabel off the table, that leaves just Ben Johnson. And I just hope for once this all works out for the Bears. Because if not, well, as a Bears fan, I just don't know what I'll do. So, there's that subject. And now, shifting gears and staying on the topic of the NFL. All right, so in terms of predictions for the college football playoffs and the NFL divisional round, or in terms of the national championship for college football and the divisional round playoffs, me and Tyler Lavalette, we will make those predictions on Friday in our next podcast. Yep, the podcast, we'll have our first one for the first time in 2025 after a few week hiatus. But now I'll focus on a different subject, and that revolves around the Vikings and Sam Darnold. Oh, boy. Sam Darnold had himself a great season, okay? The Vikings had a great season, but they end up being a one-and-done team in the playoffs, which, admittedly, okay, I was surprised by it. I kind of thought about picking the Rams over the Vikings. I thought about that. But I kind of thought at the end of the day, the talent of the Vikings would be just a bit too much for the Rams. But it turns out it was the Rams, especially on defense, who were just too much. Not for the Vikings, but for Sam Darnold. Like, the Rams were able to crush the Vikings because all game long, they got pressure on Sam Darnold. And, okay, granted, not the best game for Minnesota's offensive line, but, man, Sam Darnold in the last two games of the last game of the regular season and his first ever postseason appearance, goodness me, he crumbled under pressure. You know, there's going to be times where you're going to feel that pressure. And you know what? That's kind of what separates the great quarterbacks from the good quarterbacks and the good quarterbacks from the bad. Who can handle the pressure? And in his first playoff game of his career, the pressure ended up being way too much for Sam Darnold. And the Lions, they put all the pressure on Sam Darnold in that final regular season game. And the Lions, as a result, the Lions were able to dominate the Vikings. And it's the same thing with the Rams. You know, it's almost like the Rams received the blueprints from the Lions on how to beat this Vikings team. I mean, this Vikings team was good, but they had a glaring weakness. Get enough pressure on Sam Darnold, and he just disappears. He vanishes. He goes ghosting. All right, not saying he was ghosting on the Vikings, but he turned into a ghost. You know, everyone makes fun of him for seeing ghosts, but he turned into a ghost in the playoffs when the Vikings needed him the most, and all of that because of the pressure that the Rams defense was able to put on him. So if you're the Vikings, where do you go from here? Do you bring Sam Darnold back? Okay, I think they just signed him to a deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, and a big deal too, which could prove to be costly for the Vikings. Oh boy. It wouldn't surprise me if his confidence has been shaken up now. And we'll see if he'll put up the same numbers as he did It'll be interesting to see if he will put up the same numbers going into the 2025 regular season as he did in 2024. All right? I mean, he had a great offensive line in Minnesota, a lot of great receivers around him, but he got exposed, and now the rest of the NFL may have the blueprint on how to beat even a confident Sam Darnold. So, Question is, will the Vikings just let him walk and take their chances either on a different veteran or turn J.J. McCarthy loose? Because I think McCarthy may need some more time. A lot of it due to the injury. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Vikings bring Sam Darnold back for one more season, but I'm just saying he might not be good in this next season as he was all of this season. Because, second year, defenses figure you out. And the Rams defense, the Lions defense, they had his number. They figured him out. And they may have now spread the blue. Now there's tape out there on how to beat him. So we'll see if Sam Darnold if he does return to the Vikings, we'll see if he has that same confidence going into next season as he did all of 2024. Time will tell, but I think Sam Darnold's stock just plummeted. And we'll see how it works out for the Vikings if they do decide to resign him or just let him walk. I don't know. Hard to say at this point, because his last 2 games, he was... Look, I'm not saying it's all his fault as his offensive line struggled to protect him, but even under pressure, a great quarterback figures out ways to get the ball to his receivers. And Sam Darnold he couldn't figure that out. He couldn't get the ball to his receivers under all that duress. He crumbled. He went ghosting, as one would say. He was seeing ghosts again. He was either seeing ghosts or he was the ghost, for crying out loud. Up to you folks. That's you guys to judge right there. But the Minnesota Vikings, they got a tough decision to make. Do you bring back Sam Darnold and help J.J. McCarthy learn under him, or is it a different veteran? Or do we turn J.J. McCarthy loose if you're the Vikings? Guess we'll find out, won't we? On to this day in sports history. On this day, the 15th of January. The 15th of January, 1892. It's going into the 1800s. Basketball rules first published in Triangle magazine, written by the legend himself of basketball, James Naismith. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Waxon Wednesday. Again, looking forward to doing another Friday podcast with Tyler LaVallette. And, hey, if you liked what you saw today, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you guys got questions, let me know, and I will try to answer it in next week's video. All right, and for now, I will say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and this is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, signing off.